Here's how to create a professional motion graphics intro in DaVinci Resolve Fusion. This is an iPad tutorial, but these same steps will also work in Resolve for your computer. Let's take a look at what we're going to create. This was inspired by a popular motion graphic effect that I've seen numerous times from many big company ads. As the text zooms toward us, it turns transparent and we fly through it. It's a surprisingly simple yet very effective technique that can be used in a lot of applications. To get started, let's look at what we're working with. First, we've got the text logo. I pulled this off of a quick Google search. As you can see, it doesn't have a transparent background, so we'll need to fix that. The last thing is a piece of footage to put under the logo, to showcase the effect that we create. So now, the first thing we need to do is make sure the logo file JPEG or PNG is the same aspect ratio as the composition. To easily check that, click on the Fusion tab. View the media on the right viewer by selecting Media in 1 inch and hitting the number 2 on your keypad. You can see that the logo file has an aspect ratio of 1919 by 905. Our main timeline composition is set at 1920 by 1080, so this is incorrect. The easiest way to fix this is by going back to the Edit tab. Right-click on the logo file and select New Compound Clip. This will effectively nest the logo file in a 1920 by 1080 container. Now when you click back on the Fusion tab, you can see that our logo file is in the proper 1080p aspect ratio. Before we jump in, let's make a quick game plan of what we need to do. I'm making a note off to the side here by hitting Shift spacebar to bring up the quick menu and typing in Note. So, the first thing we need to do is to separate the giant text from the white background. Then, we will animate the text and smooth the animation with the Spline editor. After that, we'll put our own white background back on the text. Finally, we'll key out the red logo and animate it to turn on when we want it to. So, for step 1, hit Shift spacebar and search for the Clean Plate node. Once it's added after the logo node, on the right side is the eyedropper icon. Click and drag it from the right onto the red text. You should see the white background disappear and be replaced by the transparent checkerboard background. You can adjust the threshold and color sliders if your mask isn't as clean, but in our case it worked pretty well right away. One note here, don't use the erode slider or else you will run into issues later on with the text cutting off when you animate it. Now that we've got the text isolated, we're going to animate it. Hit Shift spacebar and search for a transform node to go after the Clean Plate node. Select the transform node, hit the number 2 to make sure it's being viewed, and look at the transform controls on the right. For this example, we're only going to animate the size slider. Make sure you're at the first frame of the clip, then adjust the size slider to be how you want the text at the beginning of the clip. I want to decrease the size just a bit. Click on the diamond keyframe next to it to set the first keyframe. Scrub forward a few frames to right before you want the text to start moving toward the screen. Stop there and click on the diamond keyframe again to set another keyframe with the same settings as the first one. Move forward a few more frames to where you think the text should be huge and take up the full screen. Stop there and increase the size slider. In this example, I have to type out a manual number to get the size big enough. Now we have the rough animation. Let's smooth out those keyframes using the Spline editor. Click on the Spline editor on the top right, and turn on the transform checkboxes to see the keyframes and graph. Click on this icon to the left of the magnifying glass to fit the view. Click and drag to highlight both keyframes, then click on the arc line option on the bottom middle. This will smooth out both keyframes. Now our animation has some smoothness to it. Feel free to continue to tweak these settings to your liking. The next step is adding our own background. Make sure no node is selected, then add a background node. Change the color to white, then drag the connector onto the end of the transform node to automatically create a merge node. By default, the inputs are swapped, so swap the background node arrow to be yellow and the transform node arrow to be green. Now it's time to key the red text. Add a delta keyer node after the merge node. Drag and drop the eyedropper onto the red text to select it, and you should see it go transparent. To animate the transparency, use the gain slider in the delta keyer. Find the frame before you want the transparency to start, and make a keyframe with the gain at 0. Move forward a few frames, and turn the gain up to 1 to make another keyframe. Now the transparency is animated. Let's smooth the keyframes the same way as before using the Spline editor. A bonus step here is to blur everything as the text gets larger. This helps hide these jagged edges that were made when we used the clean plate node to isolate the red text. Add the blur node, and go to the frame before you want the blur to start. Turn the blur slider to 0 and set a keyframe. Move forward a frame or two, and turn the blur up. Keep doing this every few frames until you're happy with the blur and the jagged edges being hidden. Change the clipping mode to none to avoid any spillage at the edge of the frame. And that's it. Here's the final result. Thanks for watching.